This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. I've always been a firm believer in the saying, you can't go back home again. And this doubly applies to movies. One of my favorite movies is 1999's House on Haunted Hill, directed by William Malone. And I so enjoyed this movie until I saw it again. I haven't seen Malone's remake of House on Haunted Hill probably for a few years now. I recently saw it again last night. And not as good as I thought it was. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it, because I did. And I think it is overall a pretty clever movie and one of the best remakes ever made. Though on the whole, it's not a great movie. The director of photography is Rick Bota, who did a lot of the Hellraiser movies, in fact, as in directed a lot of the Hellraiser movies. And it's kind of, visually speaking, somewhat flat, despite it being very colorful and extremely well edited. This movie is edited to death, but in a really good way that's very evocative of the original movie. So it works in that respect, but it doesn't quite age as well as it should, considering. Though I mentioned that it's probably one of the best remakes ever made, and I stand by that. I'm not saying it's the best movie ever made, or even in the ranking of best movies ever made, because it's not. But as I said, it's a great remake because it takes into account everything that happened in a 1959 movie, stays faithful to it, yet changes it in ways that make it really interesting and engaging. If you're not aware of the 1959 movie, it stars Vincent Price as actually I don't remember what he did in that movie, truth be told, but he was having a party at this house, the House on Haunted Hill, and he had invited certain people to stay overnight, and they would be paid $1 million. I think it was $1 million, maybe it was less, because it was 1959 after all, to do so. And the thing is, about the original movie, there was nothing supernatural about it. It was a duel between Vincent Price and his wife, who are trying in various ways to kill each other. And that was the whole premise of the movie. And the 1999 version updates it in a really interesting way. What it posits is that there's indeed something very much supernatural going on. Vincent Price's character, who's now played by Geoffrey Rush, and who's excellent in the role, is working to kill, I guess, his wife, played by Famke Janssen, who's also excellent in the role. And so they invite some people in their house, not knowing that the house itself is a thing. It's like a repository of evil. And it was, prior to them using it for a party, a psychiatric institute for the criminally insane. So the house itself is very much alive. And what it's trying to do is to kill the descendants of those that had participated in the mass slaughter that also happened at that psychiatric institute. So that's an interesting wrinkle it introduces, and it changes it from essentially a murder mystery to very much a supernatural one. Jensen and Rush really play up their roles, and they are so good and so campy, and they're just devouring scenery, particularly Geoffrey Rush. And it's just a joy to watch. As I said, House on Haunted Hill is not a great movie. In fact, in some ways, it's barely passable. But also, as I said, it understands that a remake needs to be faithful to the original while having distance from the original. By which I mean, the remake of House on Haunted Hill came something like 40 years after the original. Most people probably hadn't seen the original, though those that are aware of it and have seen it would probably be not at all irritated by the remake. It's faithful, while at the same time it advances the narrative in some really interesting ways. The idea that Geoffrey Rush is this amusements creator as in amusement parks and rides and that type of stuff, is really interesting because it feeds into his character and why he's doing what he's doing in the way that he happens to be doing it in. And the movie is also well balanced. It doesn't dwell on that. It just establishes who his character is. And I think it's maybe 5 minutes, give or take. Well, maybe slightly more, but not a lot more, of a movie that lasts an hour and a half. So you understand why he does things the way he does them and why he's as odd as he actually is. It's just a really good movie for what it is. I mean, I can't say enough that this is not a great movie, whatever that means to you. But it is a damn entertaining one. It's well shot. It's interesting. It hasn't perhaps aged as well as it could, but that's okay. It's really worth watching. If you have not seen the 1999 remake of William Malone's House on Haunted Hill, check it out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Peace.